Thanks, Cian Corla. Well, Minister, I don't believe that the US are responsible for everything. I think the State of Israel is responsible for quite a bit, and that is the subject matter of my next question. You are aware that the Ireland-Palestine Solidarity Campaign launched a campaign to try and ensure that Ireland would play a role as a neutral country in delivering an arms embargo with Israel. Now, as you're aware, we have bought and received a lot of military hardware from the Israelis. Are you planning to end that? And what's the position that you've advocated inside the EU on that?
Thank you. I've previously outlined to the House the position with regard to the procurement of defensive equipment by my department. I've also explained the scale and type of such equipment that the department has acquired from Israeli companies in recent years, and the purpose of such acquisitions, which is to afford the greatest possible force protection and operational effectiveness to the Irish Defence Force personnel. And I can go through what we've actually bought, and most of it is defensive equipment, not offensive equipment. The principle of competitive tendering for government contracts has to be used by the Department of Defence for the acquisition of defensive equipment for the Defence Forces under EU law. Central to those procedures is the requirement to allow fair competition between suppliers through the submission of tenders following advertising of the tender competition, usually on the tender site in line with the EU directive on the procurement of defence and security equipment. The matter of barring Israeli companies from entering tender competitions for the provision of military goods would be akin to Ireland unilaterally placing an embargo on such goods from Israel. And this raises, inter alia, serious implications for Irish foreign policy, which were outside my remit as Minister for Defence. As the Deputy is aware, trade policy and market access are largely EU competencies, and any restrictions or bans on imports from any particular country would have to be a concerted EU decision. The manner in which the Department of Defence procures both goods and services remains consistent with international best practice and is in line with EU and UN decisions in relation to trade embargoes.
Thank you. Deputy Daly.
Minister, in June 2013, Ireland signed up to the Arms Trade Treaty, stating that it will prohibit a state from authorising arms exports where it has knowledge that the weapons will be used in the commission of genocide crimes against humanity, breaches of the Geneva Convention, and so on. Ireland has bought almost 15 million worth of arms and military components from Israel over the past decade, and Irish companies have exported about 6 million worth of products. The Israeli regime, as you know, have killed over 9,000 Palestinians, including over 2,000 children since 2000. Now, it's not about the process of us being involved in trade with this state. It's the fact that we're involved with them at all. And this government has participated in embargoes and sanctions against other authorities. This is sufficiently serious for that, and a positive neutrality would actually cease this trade and have individuals, the State of Israel and arms manufacturers in Ireland profiting from the killing of Palestinians is absolutely appalling. You should really be using your position inside the EU and the UN to advocate an embargo throughout the EU, not just sit back and say, oh, it depends on what the EU does. What position are you advocating inside those organisations to deliver that?
Well, for the record, Deputy, I have been using my position to advocate solutions to what is a very entrenched and very, very difficult relationship and problem between Israel and Palestine. But I don't believe that by advocating for Ireland unilaterally introducing an embargo or sanctions on Israel will actually help in that process. And it is not true to say that Ireland unilaterally implements embargoes or trade sanctions on other countries. When we do that as part of the EU or part of the UN. And I think you know that. But I think for the record, people should understand the kind of equipment that we're talking about here. What we're talking about is X-ray equipment for explosive ordnance disposal duties, which is hugely important for Irish troops abroad. We're talking about helmets and personal protection. We're talking about an artillery fire control system. We're talking about unmanned aerial vehicles, again, which is hugely important in terms of the protection of our troops. We're talking about surveillance and target acquisition suites for 4 light tactical armoured vehicles, which is the kind of systems that we're using in our armoured vehicles abroad. And we're talking about ground surveillance radar systems. So primarily, we're talking about equipment that helps to protect our troops in the field. And we have gone through the proper tenders process to actually acquire it.
Yeah, it's not about what we're buying, it's about who we're buying it from and who's profiting from it. The reality is, Minister, I mean, you say that sanctions are not going to help, but talking nicely hasn't helped. And you've no problem in supporting sanctions against the Ukraine, even though far less people have been killed in the Ukraine than has been in Palestine. The reality here is that Israel is unlawfully occupying Palestinian land and is breaching its international legal and humanitarian obligations. And Ireland should be to the forefront of advocating an end to that process. So where's the double standards are there again. It's not, you can't do anything, you can't impose sanctions against Israel, but you can against the Ukraine. And all we're looking for, and Russia, is consistency here in that regard. It's just not good enough.
Sorry, you have 10 seconds. 7 seconds.
I just want to support.
Sorry, you have to understand there's a time limit on each question.
No, I was going to say.
If I go over time on questions, it means that your question won't be reached.
Well, I was actually going to say.
You have to understand this. This is why I asked the minister and other to recognise the chair. I'm not being awkward here.
No,
it's just that we're imposing.
What I was going to say, and I appreciate your challenge, Councillor. I was going to say that it's my question that's 11, and I'm happy to waive it to get time to speak.
No, we can't. You see, that's why I want to get to it. That's the whole.
No, I appreciate it. Well, I'll be very quick.
Okay.
Basically, Minister, I 100% support the issues that Deputy Daly is raising. I mean, how long are we going to do business with the military, whatever about the Israeli state, the military apparatus of the Israeli state, considering that they have 5% of Palestinian land remains in the hands of the Palestinians? The Oslo Accord is in tatters. The settlements continue. Jerusalem is.
Sorry, Deputy, please.
I just think it's shameful that to say that, of course this type of apparatus helps our defence forces. Get it from somebody else.
Yeah, but I think you're missing the point, though, with respect. The point I'm making is that if there are to be embargoes imposed, that needs to be a decision at an EU level. Ireland's position in relation to a two-state solution as regards Israel and Palestine is very clear, has been articulated on many occasions, and whether it's our Minister for Foreign Affairs, whether it's myself, or whether it's the Taoiseach or others, we are strongly advocating, and Ireland is very much part of the debate around how the European Union can be of more assistance in terms of getting a lasting peace process and lasting solution in that part of the world. And can I say, our Defence Force personnel put their lives at risk to try and do it as well. So anybody who suggests that Ireland isn't committed to trying to find ways of delivering lasting peace in the Middle East needs to look at the number of Irish troops who unfortunately have paid the ultimate price in places like southern Lebanon, trying to do that.
Thank you.
So we are committed to trying to get an outcome for people who for far too long have been living in misery in that part of the world. But I don't personally think that those efforts will be assisted by the kind of approach that's being